Hi, and welcome to the Steep Masterclass. Everything you need to know about getting started with metric-based BI. I'm super excited to have you here, so let's get started. First of all, let's introduce ourselves. Who am I? Who is Pyne? Who are we? I'm Emilio Bitz. I am an analytics engineer here at Pyne. We are a data consultancy boutique based in Copenhagen, specialized in data engineering, analytics, strategy, machine learning, and AI. And we've been very lucky. We've been implementing successfully Steep for a diverse range of companies, including businesses with annual revenues between 1 and 50 million. Whether it's the first ever BI implementation or migration from traditional tools like Metabase, Tableau, Power BI, Steep has been consistently a game changer. By combining it with tools like Weld and BigQuery for data ingestion, modeling, and storage, we have been able to build modern and efficient data stacks in sometimes under 45 minutes. It has completely revolutionized the way we work and deliver actionable insights to our clients. So we're super proud to be partnering with a forward-thinking startup like Steep to change the way businesses approach BI, and we hope you get value from this masterclass. Here are the 10 steps we have for today in order to go from zero to hero with Steep, but also the semantic layer principle. First of all, we need to understand what are the challenges of traditional BI and why is Steep the solution? Because without the problems, we don't have solutions. Before we get it started with Steep and everything you need to know about this wonderful tool, we also need to understand the core semantic principles. What does semantic mean? What does it imply from a data perspective, but also for the business? And it's really a fundamental piece in order to fully understand the reason why Steep exists in the first place. So the challenges with traditional BI tools. Usually when we think about traditional BI tools, we usually characterize them by time-consuming, they're super complex, we have inconsistent metrics, and steep, no pun intended, learning curve for the data team, but also for the end users. Without training, it's usually hard to just onboard someone and just let them utilize the data platform. And that's why Steep is a solution. Steep, in a few words, is really fast to set up, easy to maintain. As I mentioned previously, we've been able to set up Steep in less than 45 minutes, and in order to build some, for example, marketing dashboards or sales dashboards for e-commerces, and we've been surprising ourselves at how quickly it can be done in combination with other tools. The other aspect is that it is a metric-based tool in the sense that you, as a data team or a business user, will create, for example, one revenue metric, and everybody in the business will be able to just select that metric, break it down, aggregate it with different filters, and this is essential in the way we distribute metrics to the business. We will talk a little bit more about metrics later on. On top of that, Steep is also very intuitive for all users, whether it be data engineers, analysts, but also end users, like people that actually make decisions based on the data. And this has been a game changer in terms of really increasing the data adoption in companies. Lastly, it is an exceptional value for the price. We will also have a mention on the price breakdown that Steep has. It's very transparent, very clear, very simple to understand. But for the value that you get and the price that you pay, it's been really wonderful. Another thing that is very likely to also help you here is that it is by default beautiful. If you've ever been in that situation where your data team spends weeks building a dashboard and it looks like not so good, you are a bit annoyed. And also your data team is also annoyed because I remember, for example, the times where I would build something in Tableau and it would take me 30 minutes, but I would spend an hour just trying to make it look good with, all the different customizations. And here, really, Steep is built with design in mind, and this is also a game changer for us who are building reports, metrics, etc., etc. And yeah, it's just super nice. So, now that we have talked about the issues with traditional BI tools, why Steep is a solution, let's get into the core semantic principles. And here, just to give you a quick overview on what is Steep. Steep is a modern analytics platform powered by metrics, going back to metrics, that changes how companies use data together based on the semantic layer. So really, 3 words to keep in mind here: metrics and semantic layer. Let's dive into the core semantic principles. First of all, what does semantic mean? Let's just go back to the basics. First principle, semantic is simply the study of meaning or truth and how it is defined. And this is really, really important when we think about the semantic layer. We can think that, okay, it is the layer where we establish truth, where we establish meaning. So that's the layer where we establish truth for our business. The semantic layer, from a data perspective, is where the data teams define business truth in a centralized and structured manner. And this is very, very important because that's how we can improve trust, by having a centralized way to organize our metrics and also define them so that we know where the definition comes from and we know who to go to if we need to change that definition. But why does semantic matter in the first place? And for lack of better words, I'm going to use my wife's wisdom when she told me, without a shared truth, we live in separate realities. And this works for relationships, but also for business and data teams and semantic layers. Because when you are running a business and you have all of these amazing people helping you each day, it's really important that you all see the same reality. Otherwise, you make different decisions, you have different opinions on the business, and with this misalignment of realities, we really have a hard time collaborating, being creative. And so that's why it is essential that we have the same shared truth to have the same reality. Let's give you an example. So you probably went to a meeting and someone just asks a simple question. How many orders did we get last month? Or how many leads did we get last month? And what happens is not so straightforward. You have 4 different people telling you 4 different numbers, and what happens is that we have lost trust, first of all, into our numbers, because surely everybody has a different definition of the amount of orders we had last month. And essentially you spend 30 minutes, as I write at the bottom of this slide, just arguing on whose truth is right. And this is really frustrating, right? Not only for the people involved in the meeting, but also for the business as a whole, because productivity decreases, trust decreases, and collaboration decreases as well, because we have those siloed definitions and no one is seeing the same reality. And when you don't spend time debating whose truth is right, you can spend time executing. And the semantic principle is a vital exercise for businesses, because once everyone has agreed on what the truth is, collaboration, trust, and ultimately creativity can truly flourish. With the semantic layer, all business logic is defined and validated in central place, reducing discrepancies, making it easier and quicker to adjust definitions, and improving trust across the organization. What's more, the use of everyday language to define metrics makes them much more accessible and easier to engage than a complex query. For example, if I go into a meeting and I just pull the revenue metric, it's very straightforward. Average order value, straightforward. Lead. And this is also why we need to have a BI tool that's very intuitive for end users. And this approach encourages a wider adoption of self-service data across the company. And as we have more team members, involved in the analysis, we have more ideas and we have more people involved in the day-to-day interpretation of the data and how we can utilize it. With that in mind, the semantic principle is not this new shining technology that everybody is talking about. It is more of a philosophy. It's a principle. It's an exercise that really pushes team to truly collaborate. And we've been very lucky to implement this for a various amount of companies. And the one thing that we have observed is that people argue. People argue on what a lead is, and this is good. But ultimately, at the end of the day, this argument needs to come to an agreement, because once everybody has agreed to one definition, we can move forward and truly collaborate. So this is really important. The presentation on the core semantic principle is finished. We can move on to Steep. So I'm really excited about it. let's get started. Firstly, you'll have to move to steep.app and click on Get Started. Here, you'll be prompted to create your account. Don't worry, there's no credit cards needed. You can get started, create your workspace, build your own metrics, and up until the moment you have invited 3 members to the workspace or have created more than 3 dashboards, you don't have to pay for Steep. So this is really a good opportunity to just try the tool, see if it fits your needs. If you like it and there is no strings attached, you can always leave and there is no issue. At the same time, if you don't want to plug your own data, you've also had the possibility to create a demo account. And what's going to happen is that you will have your workspace and Steep will ingest a dummy data, so you can just play around with the tool and you don't even have to use your own data. So click on Get Started, create your account, and you'll be prompted to create your workspace. And here I'm just in the demo account I was just mentioning with Steep's own demo data. And let's create our own workspace. So let's call it Steep Masterclass. You also have the possibility to include your own logo if you want to customize a little bit your workspace. So let's get started. Great. So as I said, once you have created your workspace, it's very easy. You create your account, you create the name of your workspace, and then you arrive on this page. And here we can do 2 things. One, we can connect our data source, or we can try the demo data. Choose as you see fit. For today's session, I'm going to connect to BigQuery, but if we click on Connect Data Source, you'll see that there is a wide range of database supported. Additionally, we have a semantic API. If you are familiar with dbt or even Cube, you know that they have announced the semantic API, which enables you to interact with your semantic layer directly from an API. And this is really amazing. If you are a dbt user or a Cube user, you could even just use your current semantic API, plug in the different credentials needed, and you can have all of your metrics directly imported in Steep and visualized. So this is really easy to get started if you have one of those 2. But as I said, today we're connecting to BigQuery. So let's go. I'm going to say BigQuery, and here I'm just asked to import my project ID, service account email, and private key. If you have any questions, don't worry. There's also the Steep Help Center where all the information you need to get started is also there. So for example, if I go to BigQuery, I can easily see all the steps that I need to take in order to connect BigQuery to Steep. And here it's very straightforward. Great. So I've included all of my credentials. Don't worry, it will be deleted afterwards. And I can now test and save my data source connection. Great. We're connected. So it's amazing. We can definitely get started now on actually creating metrics, getting some data that we are connected to BigQuery. For this tutorial, we are looking at sales data from an e-commerce with a wide range of products and categories. We have about 2 years worth of data, and we have lots of information on the customer, also on the order, the payment system, etc., etc. We will explore all the features as we go through the UI. So first of all, we need to create some metrics because it's a metric-based BI, so we need to create some metrics. So I'm going to click on the metrics UI, on the little plus, and here I'm prompted with different ways of aggregating my data. So I have the classic sum, count, a ratio, count distinct, and I also have the ability to write my own SQL if I need to have a bit more flexibility with my questions. Let's see with a very standard example with a sum. So I'm going to create a revenue metric. I'm going to say sum. I'm going to name my metric revenue. I only have 2 tables, sales. Here I'm selecting it. The value is the column that we're going to aggregate. So in this case, I have a total price representing my net revenue. And we need a time. All the metrics have these 3 prerequisites. So the table you want to select, the column that you're going to aggregate, and the time period. So here I have order date. And you can see actually the SQL that is generated underneath that query. So here I can see my daily sales revenue. But it's also interesting to have dimensions. So for example, if I click on dimensions, I can select the product names, the categories, and also my location. This will enable us to break down the metric with those dimensions. We'll see later on how it looks like. We also have the ability to filter the data underneath. So that, for example, in my case, I want to exclude orders that have been cancelled. So I only want orders that have been complete. I think it's completed. Turns out it was not complete, it was delivered. So I can directly filter out some of my underlying data if I need to. So here I only want to retrieve the delivered orders. If I refresh, I should have some data. There we go. We have some data for our revenue metric. Awesome. We can do a lot more. We can see that there is also different time grains. So for instance, I know that my underlying data is daily sales. But if it was the case that I only retrieve my sales data on a weekly basis, monthly basis, then I could toggle daily off and on. For this masterclass, we are only using daily data. Next is the private feature. And private features are a way to essentially restrict the permissions on metrics. And this is very important if, for example, you want to have some metrics that are only viewable by your C-level or your head of departments. So if we were to toggle this on, right now only admins are able to see this metric because we have not yet created teams. And I'm just going to save this so that we can discover the teams features. If you navigate on the left side to teams, you can see all teams, and here we don't have a team yet. So let's create a one. Let's say, for sake of argument, that we want to have a C-level team. We're just going to create it and call it C-level. Let's add a little blue, and I want to make this private. If you don't make this private, then members of the workspace are able to join the teams on their own. So let's make it private. This way, only the people who are invited by admins to the teams will be able to see those restricted metrics. So let's go back to my revenue metric. You see that now that we have saved our revenue metric on the left side, we can navigate through it, and we already have a visual of our daily revenue. Let's edit this metric, and you can see now that if we click on the private feature, we can select C-level. And so now you can see that the teams with access to the revenue metric are only the C-level people. So super cool. We will dive into cohorts later on as part of the advanced features of Steep, and also for slices. Just to finish it off here for the first metric, we can also add a description. So I'm going to say net revenue, daily net revenue, to be more precise, daily net revenue from our Shopify. Lastly, I can also assign this metric to a category. You can imagine that as we create more and more metrics, the left-hand side can be quite messy. So it's very important to keep things tidy and clean. So for today, we'll create a category called sales. That's pretty good. The other thing that's very important in the semantic principle is the idea of owners. So let's say that you're quite a large company, or even not so large, like 10 people. And each person in the company has a particular role and expertise. And so let's say, for example, that I'm the person in charge of computing revenue, and I'm in charge of the Shopify source. You could say that after this very intense meeting on agreeing on the same definitions, I, Emilio, is the owner of the metric. And if anyone has any questions regarding the way we compute revenue, they should come to me. And so I can assign this metric to myself. And so this way, when I save this, and in Steep, I can go to About, I can see that, okay, this is revenue metric in the sales category, and the owner is Emilio. And so if as an end user, I have a question, I can easily know who to go to if I want to understand the reasons why, revenue is X amount on that day, or why is it different from my definition that I've computed in my spreadsheet, etc., etc. Great. So I'm going to create a few more metrics just to show you more features. So let's get started. We have the unique count. So let's say, for example, that I want to have a customer metric to understand simply like how many customers do I have each month. So I would again go to metrics, create a new one, select my table, so sales, the identifier here. So I'm going to count distinct customer ID. Same thing with the time, order date, and then I can probably just select locations for this metric to just understand where are my customer coming from. Same thing here. I just want to be able to see the ones that have been delivered, to not take into account all the refunded ones, for example. I'm just refreshing to update the definition of my metric, and I will leave this available to everyone. But I'm going to still categorize it, and I'm going to assign myself as the owner. So there we go. An easy way to count distinct all of your customers, or maybe the products that you have, etc., etc. The other thing that I wanted to show you was, for example, the use of a custom value in SQL. And this is really useful if you have a bit more logic that you want to involve in your computation of your metric. And in our case, we want to just understand the average order value of our business. So once again, metric name, selecting my table, and here custom value. You see that I actually need to input something, and the example is very insightful. I can just write, for example, the sum of the quantity multiplied by the price, but I can also include a case statement, or for example, if null or if keyword in this, depending on the syntax that you want to use based on the database that's underneath. So in our case, we just want to do the sum, and if you have forgotten the name of the column, you can just click on available columns and then look for total price. There you go. So I'm going to do the sum of total price divided by the count of each order ID to just understand my average order value in the business. I'm going to save this, click on my select my time frame, and here we should have our average order value for the business. Let's not forget to align with definitions, so we want to also select other status equals to delivered. Here I also want to select locations as a potential breakdown, but also category and product names. I'm going to also include in my sales category, and I will assign myself as the owner. Let's save this. Great. So you see that we now have 3 metrics for our workspace, and it's been actually quite fast, easy to do. And the good thing is that we can now reuse over and over those metrics and just send them to different reports that we're going to create. But before we do jump into reports, let me just show you some of the really cool features of Steep. So let's say, for example, that as a data engineer or analytics engineer, I set up those metrics inside Steep. What I can then do is just, for example, either create the reports for the company, but I can also give some training to the different people in the company so that they can sort of self-service Steep. And you will realize as I go through the features that this is really a possibility. So for instance, if I look at the different breakdowns that I had enabled for let's move to the revenue. The revenue, I can, for example, just go on the breakdown and then select location. And this automatically creates the breakdown for me. You can see it's a bit messy right now, but for example, if I were to change from a line chart to a bar chart, I can have a somehow better visual of my daily sales. But maybe daily is a bit too much, and I'm more interested in, for instance, the monthly revenue of my business. So what I could do is move on the bottom side on the chart options and then select monthly as my time grain. And as you can see, we are only showing the current month right now, but let's say we want to show the last year. So I can navigate here and select year, and there you go. You have a full year of data in front of you, broken down by country. And this is really useful. You can see that in just a few clicks, we've been able to output the revenue by location. The other really cool feature of Steep is that, let's say I will remove the breakdown and you see that we have the last 12 months of data on the bar chart. Let's move to line chart. And people are usually interested by cumulative periods. So in two clicks, I can go again to the start options and toggle on display cumulative. And you can see that I have my 12-month cumulative data for revenue. And this is really awesome. In a few clicks, you can really understand the cumulative versions of your different metrics. I also have the ability to filter on the same dimensions that I selected during the creation of the metric. So here, for example, if I want to be restrictive in the location of this revenue, I can toggle on the filtering on location and then just select, for example, Belgium. And here I should see the monthly cumulative revenue for Belgium. Very nice. Let's stay on Belgium here. The other really cool feature with Steep is that comparison is really made easy. As I said, Steep is really here to make analytics easy and also self-service. So if I were to click on the comparison feature, I'm offered a few different options. So I could, for example, compare this metric right now, so the 12 months with the previous year. And this is going to show me two different line graphs, the current and the comparison. So you can see, for example, that in the blue line, this is July 2024, and I'm comparing it to July 2023. And this is really helpful when you are trying to create some comparison. And if you've used, for example, Tableau or Power BI, you always need to do some very deep work to just enable that kind of feature. And this is really amazing that in 2 clicks, I'm able to do this. I'm just going to toggle off the display cumulative. And here I have, for example, the comparison just on the month-to-month basis. If, for example, I were to move to the quarterly view, so my last 3 months, and here instead of previous year, I just want to do previous period. And the previous period is dependent on the time that you have selected on the bottom left. So here I have my last 3 months, and I'm going to compare the previous period, so the previous 3 months before that. So we have September being compared to June, August compared to May, and then July compared to April. And this changes if you, for example, select 6 months, you'll see that it compares to the 6 months before, etc., etc. Nice. So we have covered the breakdown feature, we have covered the filtering feature, the comparison. There's also more to the comparison. So let's say, for example, that I want to know the minimum reference line, maximum reference line, but also my average. You can see that I can do that in a few clicks, and I can just display all of this into one place. If I really wanted to go crazy, I could even do previous year on top of that, previous period on top of that, but that would be really not insightful. But it's always good to have this data point in just 2 clicks. You can see average is usually something that is asked from companies, and with 2 clicks, you can just enable it. I'm going to remove the filtering on Belgium, and just because I want to show you the metrics feature. So this is a way for you to compare 2 metrics in just one visual. And don't worry, this is just a data exploration on the metrics. We're going to build dashboards afterwards. So if I go to metric, I'm going to have the list of the metric that I see on the left. And for example, if I select customers, you can see that the customer is being added to my metric. So now I understand, for example, my revenue, but also my customer. And I could go even beyond that, and I could say, okay, give me also my average order value. And now I will have 3 metrics within one graph. And so we have the revenue, the customer, the average order value, and I have this like picture of the business in one image. And you can build metrics like that. For example, if you have a marketing spend, you have, for example, new customers, and then you have your customer acquisition cost. You could have those 3 within one graph to really have the full picture of your customer acquisition cost. With the first exploration feature of Steep done, let's move on to another feature, which is the bar charts. The rank charts. And this is a good way to just see who are the top performers. So in our example, we are prompted to select a breakdown. So let's see in the last 180 days who is bringing us the most revenue by locations. There you go. We can see very easily that Austria is accounting for 11% of our revenue in the last 6 months. And this is also something that we can, first of all, filter, but also compare. So if I were to compare to the previous year, I'll be able to see the performance of Austria compared to the previous year. So here, for example, I know that, for example, Austria is performing 21% better than it was the previous year. And this is also insightful if you want to just understand the top performers from a period to another. And the same thing can be done with the previous period, as I explained before. The next exploration features is the pivot tables. In some occasions, it is much easier to read data from a pivot table. So sticking to our revenue metric, we can add, for example, the location of revenue. And here what's going to happen is that we're going to have all of our countries on one side and then the revenue on the other. We can also add, for example, 2 different levels of breakdown. So let's say I want to see my monthly revenue by locations. And this will just give us a really clear picture of where is revenue being driven depending on the country, month to month. And this is something that you can also customize and filter on. So here, for example, I can also say that, let's say that I want to be specific on the product. I can add this filter and I just want to see sneakers, for example. There you go. I can see that, for example, Italy was, a clear leader in terms of sneaker purchasing. I'm going to just remove this. And it's something that you can also customize. So for example, by default, you have this gradient of blue, but you can also switch it up to the more traditional red to green option. Just for sake of today, simplicity, I'm going to select this blue version. Awesome. We have essentially covered the most basic yet insightful features that Steep has to offer out of the box. And I found it really amazing that, with a few clicks, you can really get an insight into the performance of a particular product or a particular segment of your customers or shops. And there is a very easy way to visualize this. You can see that I didn't have to customize anything. It was really easy for me to get that. But now we need to create some dashboard, right? Because we've been playing around with the metric, and you can see that it's really easy for end users to do that, but we need to create some sort of report for our company. So let's say that we want to just have, the revenue, the monthly revenue for this year. What I can do is just go back to my revenue metric, again, select the time grant as monthly. I'm selecting the year, and then the year is 2024, no filters. And here I can also, for example, add a comparison to the previous year. Just load, and there we go. I have a year-to-year comparison. So let's add it to the report. Reports are essentially dashboards, but there's a particular reason why they're not called dashboard here, is because you can really push them to be something a lot more insightful. So we don't have any reports, so let's add a new one. And let's call this company overview. You can also add, for example, a little emoji. Just taking a random one, and we have our revenue metric. Awesome. We can then, either go back to our different metrics here and customize them. So let's say, for example, that I'm interested in having this pivot table with the different locations and different months. I can select again year for 2024, and another feature that I didn't show you just earlier is the ability to add totals. So it's also important to understand the cumulative version of those metrics. So here you can see that, for example, for September, across all the locations, we have 21,000 of revenue, and here you have the equivalent for the country across the year. Same thing, we can just click on Add to Report, Company Review, and boom, we have our pivot table directly into our dashboard. And this is how you can really manipulate the different metrics, create your own analysis. And once you're like, okay, I'm happy with this, I find this insightful, I want to capture it and then keep it into a report, you can do that there. The other thing that you can do in reports that you cannot do in the exploration view is essentially adding two things. Tables, which are essentially just different metrics that you can put together into a more tabular format. So let's say, for example, that I want to have all my metrics in this tabular format. What I can do is essentially just take my metrics. So let's say I want to do revenue, I want to do customers, I want to select also my average order value. There you go. I have all of them in one place. There's also the ability to switch between the time periods that you have and also the metrics. So I can do this if it's easier for you to look at. And the comparison features are always available here as well. So if I select the revenue metric here, I can do previous year, and then the same can be done for other metrics. You can also, just to make it easier for your user, color where the value is most important. And this is always insightful for people that prefer that sort of format instead of the more visual one. The other thing that has been really a game changer, I think, for most users in this recent month is the addition of big numbers. So big numbers are, as I say, just big numbers instead of the tabular version, the pivot version, or the more linear versions. And here is again a good opportunity to show you how easy it is to break down and add those very beautiful big numbers. So let's say I want to do my revenue by location. I'm prompted to essentially select my metric. So in my case, I want to select revenue, and you see that revenue just appears here for the last 30 days. And then I can also decide or not to break it down. So let's say I want to have all the revenue by location and in a nice format. I can just select my breakdown, location, and here Steep is going to automatically create all of the possibilities that are underneath the data. So here you see that I have my revenue by location with the little titles, so Austria, Belgium, Finland, etc. I also have the ability to select my time period. So for example, if I want to just select the 6 months, a year worth of data, or just monthly data, I can also do this. So let's keep it to, for example, August. I'm interested in revenue by location in August. I can also add a comparison. So let's say I want to compare those metrics to the previous month, in our case, July. And this will easily show me in a little widget the difference. So for example, in comparison to July, France is performing 70% better, but Netherlands are 30% down. And you see that in a few clicks, I'm able to create something that is very beautiful by design, but also insightful by design. I can change the colors if I want to, and this is really awesome. You can see that because we have too many countries, there might be some formatting to do, but it's still very insightful. The thing that you could also do is simply have a bunch of different numbers. If you, for example, want to create the same tabular version, but with those sort of big numbers, you could do that as well. So let's call it overview. And instead of going into breakdown, I can just select metrics and select my 3 metrics. And I can give it another color. I can also give it the previous year comparison, for example. And I'm going to go again in August and save this. And you can see again, very easy overview of my different metrics in one place with a comparison feature. And as you know, when we created those 3 metrics, we selected location as a potential dimension and breakdown for those metrics. And we are able to also filter those in our reports. So let's say that in my filter at the top of my report, I can select, first of all, a time period to just enable quick and easy access of the different time periods available. But I can also select my location. And so if I save this, I can then select location, and Steep is going to output different possibilities that I can filter on. So again, I'm going back to Belgium, and you can see that my entire dashboard has updated to Belgium only. And this is also an easy way to just filter your reports. Now, let's explore the why reports are not called dashboards. And the reason is that you can really do much more with those. I'm just going to save this to Belgium. But you can see that by clicking on the little plus, we are able to add text. And we can really have different formats. I can have a big title, so I could say performance overview of 2024 versus 2023. So this is just some of the regular titles that you have, but you can do so much more than that. You can also add text. So for example, if you wanted to create a report for your team, and then at the end of each month you just select some of those metrics, and then you just want to explain a little bit more, add more context to the performance of the business. So you could say, this year we have performed if I can spell well thanks to, and then you could add, for example, a list. So we have performed well thanks to me, thanks to Diane, thanks to Michael, and other factors. But you can really explain the story around your metrics, and this is just an easy way to create something that is a bit more insightful out of the box. And you could either just leave it here, and then you can share it by sending the link of the report to your other members of the company. But you could also do something that is really cool, and it's export this report as a PDF. And then you could, at the end of the month, write your own report, add context to the metrics, export it as a PDF, and then send it by email to all the relevant people in the company. And it will look exactly the way you see it here. And it's just like more beautiful and insightful by design when you do that, instead of just sending a dashboard with no context. There you go. We have explored reports, so let's move on to other features. Originally, Steep was only going to work with what they called widgets, and afterwards they introduced reports. But for example, for quick access to the most insightful and important metrics, you can create in the homepage just widgets of your important metrics that teams can then explore afterwards. So let's say, for example, in my homepage, whenever people arrive on Steep, I want them to, for example, see the daily revenue. So I could create widgets for my Steep masterclass workspace and click on add a widget. You can see that the revenue is not available here because revenue is only restricted to only the C level. So I can select, for example, my customers, and here I'm prompted again with different ways of displaying my customer metrics. So here we have, for example, a daily overview with, again, the comparison to the previous Monday. But I could easily change this to monthly, and you can see that we have different colors. We can also change the background, but then we have different views. So we had the bar chart, the line chart, a little bit smaller, just with the comparison month over month. And then we can also have, for example, the ability to have the breakdown directly here. So if I break it down by location, by default, as you can see, we can now have an easy to access widget. And the cool thing is that once we have edited this and we're done with it, as a user, you come every day and then you just see your customer metric. You're like, okay, I see that we are 20% down compared to the, last month currently. Why? And then you can just click on it, and you're directly sent to the metric itself, and you can start your analysis based on that. And the great thing is that once the admins have set up the metrics, the widgets, the reports, they're also like, you cannot change them in the sense that as a member who does not have edit access, you're not going to break everything. So you can easily, come here and then put the location and then filter on the Netherlands and then do everything you want. You're not breaking anything. And this is really peace of mind for the end users and also for the admins who are setting up all of this. Great. So we have discovered also widgets. You can create widgets also for teams. For example, the C-level was the only group that could have access to the revenue metric. So let's take, for example, that I want to customize this team I can say, okay, I'm going to add this widget. You can see that revenue is only accessible by C-level, and I can add it to this team. And so if, for example, I am part of the C-level team, and in the home page, you can see that I have the sort of overview of the metrics that are viewable by everybody in the business, and then also the metrics that are only relevant to my particular team. So you could imagine having teams for marketing, for product, engineering, customer service, and really having this home page relevant to your team. Another very powerful feature of Steep is the ability to show your targets directly within the metrics. So we need to set this up, and I'm just going to put back my tab bar. And here we are prompted to set up our targets. Targets have a very specific ways of being set up. There's an entire guide in the Help Center once again. If you navigate to Help Center and then go to Targets. Long story short, here is how you should have it set up. So we have the series, we're just going to call it Targets. We have a column called Metric, and this is just a way to let Steep know which target is associated with which metric in Steep. We need a time-based period, and then we need to have the value of that period. So once we have that set up and available in our database, we can just select that table. Here I only have two, so targets. It's just gonna query that table, and now we see that we have a metric for revenue on a monthly level from October 2022 to September 2024. And now we need to see what we can do with it, right? So if I can either click here and I'm directly sent to the metric called revenue, and you can see that even though my metric was on a monthly basis, Steep broke it down on a daily level for me. And if I were to, for example, go back to this monthly view and then go on the year base, you can see that, well, I'm not performing super well this year, but you have this ability to really display easily the performance of your business in comparison to your actual performance. And this not only works with the different levels of time level, but you can also do the same for comparison. So if I were to select the cumulative version, you can see that in January I was 20%, I was 80% below target, and then you can see that it goes up and up with the year. And with this ability to have targets in comparison to my actual performance displayed in a very easy way, it is really insightful to have this flexibility not only on the time level but also on the cumulative level. And now that we have set up targets, and if I go back to my reports that we created, we could also have essentially in the tabular version the comparison to our targets. So for example, here we had compared our revenue to the previous year, but I can also add on top of this my targets. I know, it's because we are only in Belgium and we don't have targets based on the location. I didn't do that. I did it on the overall view. So if I clear this out and I save it, you can see that we have our revenue metric, the previous year, and the target. And you can also see the difference, for example, from a value perspective, but also a percentage perspective. And all in one view, you have your revenue, the comparison to previous year, comparison to the targets, and it's really easy with a few clicks. You see, we haven't written any code or any SQL, any Python, nothing, or any complex queries. It's really helpful to have this overview in just a few clicks. Now let's also explore some of the smaller features that you might want to use. Directly into your metric, if you were, for example, to want to comment on, for example, a decrease or an increase, just to explain directly within Steep, like a particular event, you could, for example, go to the metric itself and select a point in time. So let's say that here we want to explain why as revenue decreased in June, and you can see that we had our exploration tab, which we have definitely looked into. We had the about tab with the different descriptions, and then there is also comments. So here, for example, as a user, for example, I'm the owner, I could say revenue was down in June because of X. and I can send it. And here you can see that when I navigate the metric itself, I come to June, and then here I have one comment, and I can see, okay, revenue was down in June because of X, and I can have more context into the reasons why a particular metric was up or down, or just add more context in general to the metric itself. Another feature that people really love is the ability to, for example, take the data that is being generated here into, for example, a Google Sheet. And this is very easy by just going into the little arrow on the top into the share button. And here you can copy both the data and the raw data. We'll see that the difference is just the way this is copied. So let's say that here I have the revenue on the last 30 days. I can copy this data, go into a Google Sheet, and then just creating a new one, I can paste this, and you can see I have the daily view of revenue directly from the copy paste tool. And if you want to have it on a column based, you can also do that. We're just going to go back to our workspace, click on raw data, and then pasting it again, and here you have it on a column based. And this is really helpful because some people do love Excel still. I also do. And it's also much easier for some people to do their analysis there, but it's really important that at least they have access to the business truth. And so this is a very easy feature to have when you just want to copy your data, go over, and then this is going to change depending on how you change the data here. So for example, if I do it on the monthly and then I copy my raw data, I can also do this, and then here I only have the raw data on the monthly basis. Okay, so we've covered a lot of features so far. There's just one more advanced feature that I wanted to show you. So let's go back to our revenue metric and let's look into cohort and slices. So to get slices out of the way, slices are just a way to just dive a little bit deeper into a metric without doing any sorts of filtering. So let's say, for example, that I want to have a slice, particularly on Belgium. I don't know why I have Belgium in my head, but we could say, okay, I want a particular slice on the location where it is equal to Belgium. And this is just going to create a slice of my revenue metric to Belgium. And I could also do more, I could involve more in the operator. So for example, this is equal, but I could say not equal to, it's in. So I could have, for example, in Belgium, UK, France, and this is how STEEP will compute it. You have not in, is null or is not null, like, not like, etc., etc. So here I'm just creating a slice on Belgium. This is just a way that is a bit more straightforward for users to just say, okay, I have my revenue and I can have my slice on Belgium. But you can imagine that, for example, if you have a global business, you could have slices on the EU, North America, instead of having the different locations. Next are cohorts. So this is also a very easy way to display cohorts instead of having complex queries. Usually, so let's just add a cohort, and here we're just asked to select a cohort time. So most of the time, for example, in e-commerce, we looked at when the customer was created or when the customer was first purchased. So in our case, just customer created. We have the way to just rename it. By default, it's just going to select the column name and formatting it. We can also display it as a percentage. So for example, if I'm interested in seeing the retention, you could toggle that on and off. Let's say, for example, that I want to see how many people are actually staying in the business over time. This is not a super good example in the sense that we would have a cumulative version underneath to just see really the cumulative version of my revenue based on that customer created at. We also have the ability to say, okay, let's only look at this on the monthly level. For sake of simplicity, let's just look at the month. We have time calculations, and this is just a way to sort of categorize that cohort. So for example, should we look at if a person was first created on the 15th of January, should we attribute this to January, or between the 15th of January and 15th of February? For sake of simplicity, it's usually just calendar periods. So let's save this. And you can see that now we have another way to explore the data, which are cohorts. So if I click on that, you can see that by default it's going to be the last 12 months and we see that, by default, originally we have 100%, that's normal, and then we can see over time if people are coming back, yes or no. It is more insightful when you have a cumulative version, and I highly recommend doing this. It really gives you a better picture of retention for your business. And the same thing can be applied like other metrics. We can add filters, we can also have different breakdowns depending on what we have configured originally. And this essentially ties up all the things you need to know to get started with Steep, to create your own analysis and really explore your data in a very easy fashion. You see that we've only dealt with clicks. We were just able to navigate our data, break it down. It was beautiful by design, it was easy to understand by design, and it is really a joy to use a tool like Steep, because it really enables to focus on what's important, which is getting insights from your data. Before we leave, I just want to touch upon the pricing of Steep. So, by default, you get a free workspace for up to 3 people, and also 3 reports. Above 3 public reports, you need to upgrade your workspace. And when build monthly, you're going to pay 14 euros per user per month. Or if you are billed annually, 12 euros per user per month. And this is really an incredible value for money when you compare it to other tools, and how easy it is to get started, to invite people, to really increase data adoption. We're really happy to be working with a tool like Steep, and our customers have been more than happy using it as well. So, this was the Steep Masterclass. Everything you need to know about getting started with metric-based BI. If you have more questions about Steep, or if you want to get started with Steep, do not hesitate to reach out to me or to us at pyne.dk. We're super happy to help you get started with Steep, or if you have more questions about Steep, or even the semantic layers, so that today we have walked through the challenges of traditional BI tools. We have looked at why Steep is the solution, and we also talked about the core semantic principles. You see, like when we created those metric in Steep, we only had one revenue metric, we only had one customer metric, and then, as a user, I can just go to Steep, select my customer metric, and I know for sure that I'm taking the same definition as everybody else. And this is where really the semantic layer shines. And then obviously we went through all of those amazing features, and there's more and more to come. The people at Steep are putting out more features every month, and it's really awesome to see how much we can do with such a nice tool. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for signing up to this masterclass. I really hope you got value. If you have any feedback, or if you want more help, don't hesitate to reach out. And until next time, stay awesome.